He's alive! Oh, in the name of God, now I know what it feels like to be God.
Frankenstein is one of the most widely known philosophical works in recent history, though it is not often regarded as philosophy. Mary Shelley may often be overlooked as a philosopher. This may be in part due to her being a woman, with philosophy often being regarded as a masculine endeavor. However, this is not the case. Women have been engaged in philosophy since the dawn of philosophy. Karen J. Warren drives this point home in her book, An Unconventional History of Western Philosophy. Warren says that it is not the case that philosophy is masculine, but that women have historically been excluded from philosophy despite their continuous participation in it. Warren laid out several criteria for determining if a woman can be considered a philosopher in order to help aid in rediscovering women philosophers from throughout history. Mary Shelley meets several of those criteria. In Frankenstein, she engages with multiple philosophical ideas of the time, having to do with creation, anti-enlightenment thinking, love, desire, and electricity as a new science. Mary Shelley was also born to a prolific philosopher, Mary Wollstonecraft, who was a woman herself, suggesting that she was engaged in philosophy to some extent during her lifetime. Philosophers have also been known to use stories to wrestle with philosophical ideas without the restraints of the physical world. Works like Franz Kafka's Metamorphosis or Albert Camus' The Stranger come to mind. Mary Shelley engages with multiple philosophical questions in Frankenstein, such as what happens when we humans become creators, what happens when science goes unchecked. Shelley also embraces philosophical ideas such as science being in conflict with creation and the natural order of the world. Frankenstein not only attempts to teach a lesson, but also positions a sort of warning for the direction of the world. With the prominence and innovation of artificial intelligence seen in the world today, the question of whether we're witnessing Mary Shelley's warning come to fruition presents itself. It would be silly to think Mary Shelley wrote Frankenstein as a direct prophecy for the future. However, I don't think it would be far from the truth to say Shelley used hyperbolic storytelling in order to make comments about the inevitable directions of science and a sort of creating of life. Dr. Frankenstein creates the monster in a show of his expertise and a mastery of this new science. It is his hubris that leads him to believe that he can create life as an imperfect creator. Very present in Frankenstein is the idea that when you create, you don't know the outcome. In the short, you may have done some great feat of science, but you don't know the effects of what's to come. And while sure, you may have some influence, you aren't the one who decides the outcome. Shelley sort of posits that as humans, we don't possess the same characteristics as an imagined perfect creator. We aren't all-knowing, we aren't all-powerful. So when we create, we don't know how things are going to go. We don't know the outcome.
Why not study it? Why not quantify it? This is unholy, an abomination, an obscenity!
The copy of Frankenstein that I have came with an introduction written by M.K. Joseph describing Frankenstein's connections to the myth of Prometheus. In fact, Shelley subtitled her story, The Modern Prometheus. The myth having two main origins. One, of Prometheus, who brought down the fire from the sun in order to comfort humanity in a time of need, only to be punished by Zeus, who chained him to the mountains with an eagle feeding on his vitals. The second is Prometheus Plasticator, who is said to have created or recreated mankind by animating figures of clay. Eventually, throughout the course of history, these myths became fused into Prometheus stealing the fire, which was the fire used to animate his clay figures. Later, Prometheus became accepted as a symbol of a creative artist. Shelley positioned her modern Prometheus, Dr. Frankenstein, as a creator rather than the suffering hero of mankind. She also linked the myth to emerging scientific theories of the time that suggested the divine spark of life might be quasi-electrical in nature. Shelley, in her own introduction, describes how a philosophical conversation about whether the principal nature of life will ever be discovered and communicated, coupled with talks of experiments conducted by Dr. Erasmus Darwin, led her to imagine the hideous phantasm of a man stretched out, and then, on the workings of some powerful engine, show signs of life and then stir with uneasy, half-vital motions. The story itself also shows links to this idea of electricity as a new science. Dr. Frankenstein in Chapter 2 turns his mind away from alchemy after a discourse on electricity and magnetism. And in Chapter 5, Frankenstein assembles the instruments of life before infusing the spark of life, further suggesting an electrical component. Shelly uses electricity as the scientific equivalent to the animating fire Prometheus had stolen from the sun. By making her modern Prometheus a scientist rather than an artist, Shelly shifts the creation away from the malleable world of art into the real, inescapable world of science, where consequences and outcomes have to be taken into account. The conversation around AI today shows striking resemblance to Shelley's imaginings of what the new science could lead to. Shelley imagined Victor creating the monster, and today many of us imagine AI replacing humans in the workforce, polluting our natural environment, and in our most dramatic predictions, AI becoming sentient and enslaving or wiping out humanity altogether. Other parallels can be seen in the monster's nature. The monster was childlike at first, until he learned to be cruel and vengeful from the world around him. The monster himself says, "I was benevolent and good. Misery made me a fiend." In the same way, AI learns from the information humans feed it, all of which is human knowledge, which is poisoned with bias, mistakes, and misinformation, making this knowledge imperfect. In this sense, when people express their fears of what AI could become, they are projecting their fear of human imperfection. Victor, as the creator, was obsessed with the idea of creating life. He was tunnel-visioned on bringing his imaginings to life without stopping to think of the consequences, fully embracing this new science and in turn turning his back on humanity. Some might say the same of technocrats or governments obsessed with the advancement of AI, without stopping to think of the consequences affecting real people, also representing a sort of turn away from humanity. The construction of data centers in order to power AI has been known to pollute the air and use absurd amounts of water and power, all while quite literally footing the bill to everyday people.
Illinois, Virginia, Ohio, Texas, and California have the highest concentration of data centers in the U.S. Residents in those states have seen their electricity bills go up substantially this year.
If we look at Department of Energy data, on average, electricity prices have increased about 6% year over year from August of 2024 until August of 2025. The independent market monitor for PJM found that data centers are overwhelmingly responsible for the increase in capacity prices.
A data center campus running at the lower end of peak demand uses roughly the same amount of power as the population of San Francisco.
Some might also take the perspective of Victor as a representation of humanity and the monster as a representation of AI. Victor fully embraced the pursuit of creating without the foresight that the monster would be his unraveling, killing him and destroying everyone and everything he loved. The monster was also a living being that had needs and desires that had to be satisfied. Victor, not satisfying those needs, created grave consequences. In the same way, AI has needs. In order for it to stay powered, it has to consume. And if humanity plans to hinge integral parts of its society on AI, those needs are going to have to keep being provided for. When Victor saw the monster's nature of what he created, he tried to abandon and destroy the monster, all of his attempts being unsuccessful. This once again emphasizing the point of when you create, not only do you not know the outcome, but you can't control it. If humanity or the creators of AI come to see the predicted consequences of AI present themselves, they simply won't be able to turn their back on what they've created. All of this in culmination, once again begging the question, was Mary Shelley right? Did she predict the future?